sure, endeavour to do. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is Hannah Herchenbach here? I thought it might have been you. Welcome, you're up next. Good timing. Oh, Hannah, can you come to the table, please? Yep, she's coming.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, she's trying to get there. Yeah. It's all right. We wondered if you'd heard me, but
Hi, do I
welcome.
sit here?
Yes, and your time starts now, and you've got your 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Hannah Herchenbach, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the importance of reinstating the $1.5 million screen production grant as a ring-fenced line item in the budget of Christchurch NZ. So first, some personal context for a moment, as my American accent might make you wonder what authority I could possibly have in speaking on the city's behalf. 20 years ago, I fell in love with New Zealand while studying abroad in Auckland, and I've lived here ever since. And for the last 13 years, Christchurch has been my home. No one from any of the other New Zealand cities I'd lived in before, Auckland, Wellington, or Dunedin, ever said to me, "Oh, you're gonna love Christchurch," or "You belong there." But I have, and I do. Christchurch has changed my life so many times over, starting with noticing upon moving up from Dunedin in 2011 that Christchurch was actually more responsible for Dunedin's internationally renowned and underground rock reputation than Dunedin was. That motivated me to complete a cultural history PhD on the subject, and that was arguing for Christchurch's rightful place in New Zealand rock history. And if you don't mind, I would like to use the rest of my 5 minutes to provide a brief overview of New Zealand's economic history, which you might not know of otherwise, that will give some context to the weight and the impact of the decisions that you're going to make in the coming weeks. I will also speak to my own experience about how the screen production grant has enriched my own life. So first, the brief history lesson, and I promise it'll be fast. New Zealand suffers from economic agglomeration, which is a tendency for economic power and its development to remain in a single center rather than have enough population or resources to be divided among multiple centers. And this is true in all small countries. The greatest and longest trend in New Zealand history has only been mentioned by one historian, James Belich, and that is the long and slow drift of economic power from the bottom of the South Island to the top of the North. And the biggest thing affecting when this economic power changes is what international markets value and the resources that are close to each individual region. So in the 19th century, Christchurch and Dunedin were the two largest cities in New Zealand. And a lot of this had to do with the soaring export prices at the time for the resources the South Island had access to, like wool and dairy and meat. Fortunes changed when the gold mines in Otago dried up, the Panama Canal opened in 1915, and international boats headed to Auckland instead. Over the last 100 years, resources like dairying in the Waikato, the Bay of Plenty's forests and orchards, and changes, part of this is cut off, but have led for the nation's economic power to shift north, and the population followed. Now the only echo of the economic dominance Christchurch once had is the grit and clenched teeth when someone mentions Auckland. When I moved to Christchurch in the wake of the earthquakes to edit Kanta, the student magazine at the University of Canterbury, I had the good fortune to interview the businessman Rod Carr, who at the time was the vice chancellor. And I asked him what direction Christchurch might take after the earthquakes. He replied that Christchurch would never lose its status as the gateway to the South Island because its geographic advantages meant it would always provide services to the hinterland. Over my 13 years in Christchurch, it has been fascinating to see its film infrastructure grow. In 2016, I was cast as one of the leads in Martin Saganen's independent feature film Spring Interlude, which was shot here in Christchurch and debuted at the New Zealand Film Festival in 2019. Martin told me at the time that he dreamed that his guerrilla-style production would connect filmmakers in the region who wouldn't know about each other otherwise and lead to more projects. It turns out Martin's vision was prophetic. The same year the film came out, 2019, the council created and implemented Screen Canterbury, a local screen office to provide services and an incentive to filmmakers who wanted to make films in the region. Last year, Screen Canterbury funded Te Puna Matarau, a nonprofit collective of filmmakers. Their first initiative, the Waitaha Screen Story Incubator, connected local emerging filmmakers in Christchurch with mentors elsewhere. One of those was me. Last year, I was struggling to find fulfillment in Christchurch despite loving it here, and was contemplating moving back to Auckland. The Waitaha Screen Story Incubator, which you funded, gave me a sense of direction and purpose, and I stayed here and continued to grow because of it. Over the last year, Te Punamatara and their initiatives have become a central hub for the once invisible network of filmmakers in the region, and I became its treasurer in service as an act of gratitude for what's provided me. In the meanwhile, I also became a community leader for Sundance Collab, which is their online platform, which has given me a first row seat to the needs of international productions, many of whom were aware of the regional incentive that the Screen Production Grant provided and value Christchurch's direct access to the locations they wanted to shoot. Christchurch is and always will be the gateway to the South Island. Reinstating the Screen Production Grant will capitalize on both the international film production's interest in South Island and the internal geographic advantage we have as a gateway to its hinterland. It's not only an investment in Christchurch's future, it's also a strategic move that acknowledges we can't all be the greatest. Not all cities rise equally in a country as small as New Zealand. There are winners and losers, and the international tides are turning. We're going to take the power back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for making the time to come in. Okay, so do we have